Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we've got Abu Hasan with us, who is choosing to remain incognito. And so, Abu Hasan, please can you introduce yourself?
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Abu Hassan. Uh, I come from a South Asian background. I've been born and raised in America. I've been here my entire life, all over the states. And I've worked in the Islamic field at universities specifically. Um, and I've been heavily involved in the Muslim community in various capacities, organizations, and masajid. Yes, I've been married and divorced twice, and I have two beautiful children, a 13-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter.
Okay, great. So, are you willing to share, first of all, what was the duration of your marriages, and why do you think they ended?
Great question. A lot of information to go over.
It's a lot of information. I was thinking it's a very short question, but it's a huge question.
I mean, I could probably talk an hour or two on these questions, but let's start. But basically, I think a good place to start is the fact that I'm a first generation, or you can say second generation, a person in America. My parents immigrated here, and I was born and raised here. So I was born and raised in that context where I had parents who were struggling to establish themselves in this country, both religiously, spiritually, in every capacity, economically, and trying to figure out the system of America, how it works, how to navigate it, and be, Muslim, cultural, to whatever capacity they could figure that out, and then convey those values and morals and the religion to us. And I think a lot of the people watching, listening, have also experienced that. So I think my story goes. It may be unique in some ways from a lot of people's stories. Maybe not. Maybe some of you will relate to me, and I'm curious how many people will, because my father actually got divorced when I was younger. He actually got divorced when I was 10 years old, and then he remarried, and that had a huge impact on me and my relationship with my father, and the lack of relationship with my mother after that, because she ended up in India and then living in a different state. So I'm telling all this background story because I don't think I had the typical sort of family support you would expect from family when you go into marriage. So I didn't have family support. Um, and so I was looking for myself by myself from the beginning, without support from the family or encouragement. I actually got discouragement from my family, because it was the typical, you need to graduate college, you need to get a degree, and you need to have so much money in the bank account. And until you have X amount of dollars, 50 or 100 grand, you shouldn't consider marriage, you know? So, but myself being a very religious person from a young age, I saw the world differently. And I saw it through the hadith and through the Quran, which I saw as encouraging marriage, even for people who were not rich, and even poor people, from what I could see and understand from the Hadith and the Quran, were encouraged to get married as long as they could afford, the basic needs of their spouse. And so I, at the age of 17 years old, was looking for a spouse, and yeah, I was actively looking, seriously looking, and it was in college that I met someone, wanted to get married to them. So my mother passed away my second year of college. I think that sort of motivated me even more to get married. Um, I had an emotional hole, and so the third year of college, I was seriously considering a person for marriage. It didn't. It fell through. It fell through because their parents wanted them to marry their cousin. They were from an Afghan background, and my parents weren't involved to convince them. So that fell through. And soon after, I met a revert sister who was 10 years older, who was divorced. I'm like maybe 20, 21 years old, third year college, and very depressed from my mother's passing, not getting the proper processing of that death. Um, and I jumped into this marriage with this revert, 10 years older, a white revert. and it just wasn't the time for me to get married, and I needed time to process. So from the beginning, there was issues. I wasn't ready mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and but I had this mindset from the beginning that I'm never getting divorced, because I saw what it did to my family, and it wasn't the right mindset because it's not part of our sharia to have like, okay, you're gonna have to stick in a marriage no matter what. You know, the divorce is there for flexibility, for need. And even though I saw the need in the beginning, I still stuck it through for 8 years. Had two kids, and it just didn't work out because I wasn't ready for it. I would say wasn't ready to be in a marriage.
So how many years were you in that marriage for?
8 years.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was it like being a solo dad after that? And what was the time period until you met your second wife?
So yeah, after I got divorced, it was a painful divorce. It's not easy to get divorced when your kids are so young and you're a young person yourself. You don't have the family support. So you're not like I'm not getting divorced and going back to my family's home. I'm getting divorced and getting my own apartment, living alone, you know, and going from a house with, two kids, your wife, to being alone is very lonely, and nobody should have to go through that. Neither a woman or a man. And I think that's one of the difficult parts of living in the West is that it is a very lonely lifestyle generally, versus living in the East, which I know has cons when you have such a big family and they're involved in every affair. But I went through that lonely side of things, so I know how painful it is, and it was extremely painful for me. Um, and you feel when you get divorced like you lost a family member. That's what it feels like. Somebody died, because you go from speaking to someone every day, communicating with them, loving them, eating with them, doing all these things with them and around them and with their support and supporting them, to not having any of it. So I do remember being in a lot of pain, um, and trying to pick myself up and move forward. The thing I didn't do, which I should have done at that point, is get therapy, go to counseling, get therapy. So now, it's been 8 years. My mother's passed away. I went through this very difficult marriage, divorce, didn't get any therapy. And actually, at that point, I enrolled into an Islamic studies program. And I took a different route with my life from business world to the more Islamic world. And that did help because the Islamic studies program that I was in had counseling classes and uh, mental health classes, and that helped a little bit. So about 2 or 3 years later, I met someone online and on a Muslim website, matrimonial website, and they were leaving a marriage. They were from overseas, from Eastern Europe, and they were checking out of a marriage which they had been part of, and they were seeking help and direction to re-engaging with their faith practice, even though they were born Muslim. They had never really engaged with their faith practice with Islam. And I felt like I could help them, and I did attempt to help them. And I got them into a shelter, and I did mentor that person. And then after some time, I proposed, feeling like we were a good match. And, we got married and we lived together for 5 years. Um, in both cases, if I look back, um, I was trying to help people who were in need of help, meaning they themselves didn't have their lives together, um, couldn't drive cars, didn't have jobs, didn't either didn't complete their degree or weren't using their degrees. And my personality is a helping type personality. I like to help people. So in both cases, I went in trying to help these people, and I think that also contributed greatly to me burning out, first of all, and then also getting divorced. Because when yeah, so so the second marriage, back to the story of the second marriage, 5 years. um that person also needed a green card, and I think the main thing that happened there is I went from a supportive Muslim community where my wife had a really nice network of sisters that she connected with on a regular basis, weekly, sometimes multiple days a week, where she got Islamic knowledge from them and love and community and fellowship. And then we moved to the middle of nowhere for my job. Um, also to have a child, I needed, health insurance, and that's where Allah took us. And that had a dramatic impact on the spiritual and then therefore the emotional and psychological health of my wife. And, if I could go back, I would have probably not made that move. And I think that would have protected the marriage. But, sometimes economics is not the most, economics, I would say now that I look back, is not the most important thing. The spiritual and mental and emotional health of your spouse and yourself is more important than making money.
Mm.
Uh, so even though my salary went up like triple and I could afford things I couldn't afford before, the spiritual health went down triple, and then the emotional and psychological health. Being in the middle of nowhere in the countryside, closest measured was 45 minutes to an hour away, no Muslim community. It was very difficult. Um,
Well, I'm just thinking that how when we look back, and I'm sure this applies to many of us, we think if we had just done this thing differently, the outcome could have been so different. But then I have
yeah,
the line that comes into my mind where a teacher, she told me, "Law min ash-shaytan," which is an Arabic saying that to say should have or could have is from Satan. You know,
correct, correct, absolutely.
it is what it is. It's the qadr. It's how things were, and we take our lessons. It's just that it's just incredible. Like just a single decision, or in your case, it seems to be a decision. In some people, it was maybe like a choice, a way of being. It could be like
Yeah,
a way of interacting. Like they say, when you are with somebody, then it's there's a certain persona of yourself that emerges. And I've
yes,
also heard recently in a podcast that sometimes when people choose to get divorced, it's not necessarily that they are walking away from the person that they've been married to, but it's they're walking away from the version of themselves that is manifested in that marriage, which I find
subhanallah.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
SubhanAllah. That's crazy deep. I have to think about that a lot.
So, so I think you did speak about how it could have been different. I could have, what's it like being uh, a single dad since then?
That's been another test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I didn't talk about the children, what happened when I moved to Indiana, but so as soon as I got married to my second wife, my second time, my first wife became jealous and she started making just a difficulty for me to see my kids. A lot of difficulty and complaints and excuses why the kids are not available when I was living closer to them. When I moved out of state, you know, I became super busy with the new position. It was a very high level, position. And I wasn't able to go back and forth to see the kids for some time, for a year or two, but I would try to communicate over the phone and through video when I could. And then, when the divorce happened, when I was in that state, so the divorce happened while I was, you know, living in that rural area. And then my wife at that time went back to her family, and it was a clean divorce and mutual. I tried to reconnect with the kids, and their mother made it extremely difficult and tried to block phone calls, tried to block me from communicating. I asked for the kids to come visit me where in the state I was. She wouldn't. She refused. And then she started being very threatening, and I eventually had to sue her to see my kids.
I was just going to
Um,
ask you that Abu Hassan, wasn't there a legal agreement that prevented her from preventing you from seeing your own children?
yeah, so we had an agreement when we got divorced. It was registered in the. It wasn't. So when we got divorced, it was more like a non. They call it a. It's like a non-disagreement divorce. So it's very fast. You still register it with the state, but it allows you to get divorced very fast without lawyers. Okay. But we did have a written agreement that we had signed, notarized. I don't know how much legal effect it had, because we didn't have lawyers with it and stuff like that. But she was still being very unreasonable. And so she, I wanted to do arbitration. That was my goal. Like, let's take this to an arbitrator and let the arbitrator decide. But what she did is she tricked me. She hired a lawyer. So when I went in front of the judge, she had her lawyer with her. I didn't have any lawyer because I thought we're doing arbitration. And, they told the court lies about me, which is things like, oh, he wants to get his daughter married at a young age, and he wants to force his daughter to wear hijab,
I'm
which is,
sure, I'm sure the
of
court
course,
loved that.
yeah. And of course, I haven't seen my daughter in person for years, so it's not like I can force her to do anything. Number one, so it doesn't make any sense. At that time, I consulted multiple Muslim community leaders, both converts and people who were born Muslim, both of them, and all of them pretty much unanimously, and all of them, yeah, all of them unanimously said the same thing to me. It said, "Do not fight it. You're going to waste thousands of dollars, and at the end of it, you're going to get nothing." They just said, "Go along with whatever she wants." You know. So she made some stupid, ridiculous agreement. I went along with it, and I was living, out of state at that time, and the agreement basically said I could see my kid 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, something like this. And then I ended up moving back maybe 6 months later. I didn't know what was going to happen, but things happened at the job, and I ended up coming back. And I've been living now very close to them, within an hour. But every month it's a fight to see them. You know, the kids, of course they have their own lives, but they don't see it as a priority to see their father. I don't think their mother encourages them at all. Um, and I've been here, now 2 years, almost 2 years, trying to be involved in their life and connect with them and be a father to them. But I think between their mother's whatever programming she's given them, and just the fact of the American lifestyle, which is a very like kind of a me lifestyle. Between these two factors, unfortunately, I haven't been able to be the father to them that I want to be. And it's coming to the point now where I'm even thinking, based on the advice of my elders, is that one, they're taking care of you, don't have to be involved in their life. And two, it doesn't seem like they want you to be involved in their life, even though they're 13 and 16. And that's been a painful pill to swallow.
Have
Um,
have you spoken to the children directly since they're older and have disclosed to them that you would like to work on your relationship, you'd like to see them more? Like, have you had those open discussions with them?
I have, but I've asked them multiple times about the relationship, about spending time together, about different avenues and ways to make that happen, offer them different solutions. But I think between the fear of their mother and the programming and the like sort of overwhelming maybe lifestyle that they have of school and whatever else they're doing, they just don't see it as a need or a want of theirs, at this age. And
From my very biased perspective, I would encourage you not to give up, not to give up.
yeah, yeah. So I haven't given up, and everybody says the same thing. I haven't given up, but like when you text and call your kids 1,000 times and they never pick up the phone call, they never answer, they never text you back, then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, what is Allah telling me, and where do I go next? And that's sort of the question I'm asking. I've knocked on this door 1,000 times, it's not answering, and now the question for me is like, as a man, single man in America, like where's next? What do I have to do to establish myself and
Mm.
make myself whole? Because I can't sit here waiting and knocking, continuously.
Mm.
So
Be very challenging.
yeah, and I don't think this is unique to me. When I read the stories of other men, Muslim men in America, struggling through divorce, I hear the same similar sort of lines of habits and procedures that come into this, and the same sort of programmings and fights. In my case, maybe I'm Allah didn't create me to be such a fighter. I'm not like a huge fighter. I don't like conflict. I'm conflict averse.
Mm.
Uh, and maybe that doesn't play well on my side, but Maybe it does. Maybe it kept my mental health together by not being too aggressive with this. Allahu alam.
I'm just wondering, like, what's the solution to the root of the problem, you know? And the only thing I can think of is trying to create awareness with men and women generally speaking, that even if your marriage doesn't work out, you don't have to be combative with your ex-spouse, and the importance of positive co-parenting. You know,
Yeah,
because if a person doesn't really think, well, I don't give a damn, like why do my kids need my ex in their life? Then it's just headed for ruin, you know. But if they can,
yeah,
it requires some kind of maturity and insight to know that, you know, this isn't a bad man. Maybe
yeah,
maybe we all have our weaknesses and flaws, but we're talking about people that are not abusive, whether it's emotionally, physically, psychologically, all of that. If we're just like a
yeah,
normal person with normal human flaws who loves their children.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
You know what's crazy is that if you see the pictures of me with my kids when we hang out, when we get a chance to go out, like spend time together, even with my daughter when I get her that 2 weeks in the year or whatever, the pictures are amazing. Like we're laughing, we're playing, we're doing all sorts of fun activities. Like if you saw the pictures, you'd be like, these people love each other. So then my only sort of answer to why they don't, pick up the phone call or want to spend more time, even when they're with me, they say, "Oh, like they want to spend more time with me," but their mother consistently harasses them to come home.
It's fascinating. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, of course, you know, I don't know about the legal implications or anything, but you just keep trying to spend in-person time, because I know that kids don't really want to answer text messages and the type of thing from their parents, but there's
yeah.
something different about physically being with your child. It's so different. So
Sure.
I just make dua that, you know, that's facilitated for you,
I
and
mean,
that
I
that relationship is rekindled. It is kindled, and you know,
I mean, uh,
inshallah. I'd like to ask you, we've had discussions about this, about the challenges about getting remarried as a man
yeah,
in 2024.
yeah. So the challenge, it is a challenge, the huge challenge because, well, I would say in America it's a huge challenge because we don't really have solid communities. Like we don't have communities. Like for example, if you went to Monroe, New York, and you went to the Orthodox Jewish community, you would see an entire village of Orthodox Jewish people and women, their wives, their children, and single men and single women, and they're all dressed in their religious, according to their Sharia, dressed in their way. They even have their own stores and all of the facilities needed to be Orthodox Jewish in 2024 America and live it out like fully, comfortably and fully, from ambulances to police to everything, and we just don't have that as a Muslim community, and and therefore then you get a lot of Muslims who have different and various thought processes of what it means to be Muslim, what it means to be American, what it means to live here, all
And
sorts of
may I add what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman?
yeah, yeah, what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a wife. But even just a support structure. Let's say if two people want to be married, raising a child by yourself is hard. It's very difficult. Versus like if you're back home from where I'm from, India, you have an entire village there of aunties and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and neighbors, and you have a whole bunch of people, cousins, and they're all contributing and giving love and advice and being sort of the role models. Of course, there's cons to that. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I've heard those cons, but um, yeah. So for me, the challenge has been, finding somebody who wants to get married, and um, often the people I generally found who do want to marry me, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer, I'm not very rich, tend to be people who need some sort of help. So they need a green card, for example. And I've spoken to at least two people who needed a green card. They were great people. I was interested in marrying them, both from South Asia and uh, but they wanted the green card right now. They didn't want to get to and they wanted to get to know me in a haram way. Like they wanted to go out bowling and go out and do stuff together and get to know, like, date, and then go jump right into legal marriage, right? And I had proposed this idea to, for the sake of the dean, of let's do the nikah, Islamic nikah. We don't need to consummate, and let's get to know each other maybe over 6 months or until we feel comfortable, and then we go into the legal stuff, because that's another level of commitment, right? With cost and commitment. And they both refused, even though they both were ready to do legal marriage and said they were. uh,
So then doesn't
and
that make you then question their intentions in the first place?
it does make me
Yeah, because if
question.
they really liked you, if they really
Yeah.
liked you, then they would say, okay, let's do the 6 month thing.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you've spoken to me about this before, that the strange mentality of women, how they would be happy just dating in a non-permissible way for ages,
Yeah.
but when you
Yeah.
want to do a nikah and treat it like an engagement period, then it's a no. So it's like they're willing to do the haram, and this is something that also is problematic, yeah.
Huge problem. It's a huge problem, and it's huge because we've created this stigma around divorce, and it's such a harsh stigma, that the idea that, okay, we're gonna do nikah, we're gonna get to know each other, and it has a potentiality for divorce, that turns off people. But it's okay to do haram for them. Like, it's okay. And I actually, now that I think about it, I've even talked to sisters who didn't need a green card. They, they were domestic students, I mean, not students, sisters who were citizens, and same thing, same issue, very, religious, practicing, praying 5 times a day, hijab, and same sort of conversation line, where I'm like, hey, let's do the nikah. We like each other. We've had a few conversations. I met your parent, one sister, I met her parents even. um but they want, like, sort of, they want full force commitment from the beginning. They want, like, all in or all out, but they're okay with dating. They're okay with the dating
Well,
part.
I'm also wondering that perhaps there's also a fear that, well, if we do the nikah, and then what if you end up being a complete jerk and I want to get out and you won't give me a talaq? That is a fear. That's why I've also heard certain female scholars advise in not just doing a nikah. They have to have it with the civil marriage because it protects the woman. Because
So,
otherwise you're not protected as a woman. I don't know.
so in America, imams give the kulla, like pretty much to any woman. I've seen it happen so many times, where a female needed a kulla, she calls the imam, and the imam doesn't even call the man, because one, he doesn't have the time, he's not a qadi, and he'll just be like, okay, based on your story, I'm going to give you the kulla, and he just gives it on the phone. This is quite common here.
Okay.
Yeah, but two, the legal system in America has advanced to the level where you don't need to do a legal marriage to be protected as a woman. Like, it protects women who are girlfriends, and it has many times in court cases. So I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I think if we investigated that, I think we would find plenty of protection for women all
Mm.
around.
I don't know about that because if you marry legally, then you have, community of property, and when you divorce, your assets, all of those are it all comes into play, right? If you whether you are married or not married. Although I don't know details about this. We need to get a lawyer on here and get their advice. Um,
Yeah.
I would like to, if you don't mind, sharing some personal stories. Like I remember you telling me of a situation with a woman and why that didn't work out. If you don't mind relating that.
Okay, now I'm remembering. Yeah. Yep. South Asian sister. Yeah. We met up for, I think, one meal, which I don't advise, by the way. I honestly don't think that's religiously proper. But anyways, I'm just relating it for the sake of this story and a mistake I made that I hope Allah forgives me for. And so we met, we talked, and she wanted to continue meeting. She was overweight, and I had said to her, like, look, she was overweight. She was in a job she hated. I think she also needed a green card. She was here legally, but that was always a concern for her. Like, oh my God, my legal status, my legal status. So I said to her, like, okay, let's work on all these things together. over the next 6 months, but let's do nikah so we can work on it. Like, let's go to the gym together. I'll encourage you. I'll take you to the gym. I'll drive over to where you are, which probably take me maybe an hour to even get there. So I'll make all these time sacrifices, money sacrifices, and I'll do all this stuff. And we'll help you find. I'll help you find a job, fix your resume. I'll even email the employers. Like I was willing to help, and that's my nature. By the way, if you look at my personality, I am a helper. But I said let's do the nikah first because instead of just jumping in legally, and not, and then so yeah, she refused that. Um, and she's still single right now, you know,
Yes, I
and
think
what,
this is
yeah,
the key point is
yeah,
that for many people, whether it's a man or a woman, because they have a certain very static picture of what it is that they want. Things have to be A, B, and C. Then if it doesn't work out that way, it's well, khalas, we're not going to continue in this vein. But this is the reality is that like situations are complex and maybe we need to look at it
exactly,
in a more fluid way, right? Because
yeah,
she may continue to be single, you know,
yeah,
and then she had an opportunity and she turned it down. And I hear many stories about, you know, people, men and women are fixated on a specific skin tone and a specific height, on a specific body type, and a specific everything. And then they turn people down and they still single.
yeah. So it's along the same line. I want to just narrate one or two more stories. Another sister, um, you know, she also had a host of issues from job to green card, and again, I offered it, Nika, and to work on all these issues. And she was working in a different state, moving closer to me, all of these things, working on it together. And then she refused. She got in a relationship with the guy. The guy ended up abusing her, dumped her. Her heart was broken. And then, because I'm a helper by nature, she ended up calling me to complain about him, and all the things that he did to her while they did a haram relationship. And I'm just, at some point I just said to her, like, look, I did advise her and stuff. And a few months later, she contacted me again. Hey, I'm thinking about Nico with you. And she would do this consistently, like, hey, I'm thinking about Nico with you. I'm thinking about Nico with you. I like you. I know you're good for me, this and that. And at some point I just said to her, look, either get your dad to call me, your father to call me, let's do this nikah, or don't call me ever again. I don't want to like be used by you as someone who you just call whenever you feel down or you're not feeling good. You know, either we're gonna do the nikah and have a proper Islamic relationship and work on life together, or I'm not going to be your lifelong advisor for all your relationships and problems. And
Yeah. Is that what they call a situationship? Is that what they call it? Like you neither
situationship.
here or there, or what do they call it? It's kind of like it's like a partial intimacy where you only connect to the person remotely, virtually, telephonically when you need that your cup to be filled in some way. And but you can't go ahead and jump full in. You don't want to. It's like this kind of partial intimacy in a way. And this
Yeah,
and this is unfortunately this is the situation that we find ourselves in today, Abu Hassan. It's
yeah,
been very challenging for everyone all over the world to get married, unfortunately. Was there something
absolutely.
else you were going to say about another situation?
No, I just wanted to say, like, I've always known from a Sharia perspective that men and women are not supposed to be alone. And most of the scholars that I've heard from said that even being online alone is not permissible, because it can lead to things. And it does, and it has. And everybody knows this. It's not like a secret or something like that. But then the question then occurs, and it has occurred to me many times, like, what's then the solution
Right.
to this marriage crisis? How do we get two people married? Um, you know, and I think we really just have to go back to traditional ways where,
Hmm?
huh?
Get more aunties involved.
Maybe it's getting more aunties involved. I think it really comes down to having a wali involved. I think that really protects hearts. Like, guys are not going to play with girls as
No,
much,
but I
women
mean,
as much,
yeah,
and vice versa.
what's the
Walis are
wali?
involved, huh?
Right. My point being is that how is the wali going to help if the guys and the girls, there aren't even opportunities to meet. So we need people in the community who are helping out and saying, hey, I know a brother, there's a sister, and trying to connect.
Yeah.
Like the wali aspect comes after that, but in just actually like facilitating introductions with people who are of
Well, like
similar deen, you know?
that's a great. I think that's you're absolutely right. We definitely need that, and that we don't have enough of that for sure. Another aspect, everybody's on these apps from Muzz to Salams to all these other apps, and it's quite common and it's very easy. That's why we're all on it. But the thing that's missing on these apps is the Wali system, where okay, I like this girl. I should be able to see her father's number, her uncle's number, or whatever, her imam's number, and then call the imam and be like, hey, I saw the profile for your daughter. I would like to, engage in getting to know her,
Mhm.
and let him question you, to the extent that he feels satisfied. And then, that chat box or however that engagement happens, should really happen with that third person there. I feel more comfortable with that now. And I want that because to me, that shows a level of seriousness and it protects me from her and her from me from saying something or doing something that would break either of our hearts or waste each other's time, etc. Yeah.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Abu Hassan, is anything else you'd like to say in closing? I mean, I
Oh,
can.
I do have something. I do want to narrate one more story. Okay. And the story I want to narrate is that, I've worked in universities for many years, and students would, sometimes tell me, these Muslim students would sometimes tell me about their girlfriends, sort of as a way to get approval. And in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, man, I should just do nikah for these people so that their relationship would be halal. It's a 5-minute procedure, two witnesses, a mahar, and then vows, right? And so I remember asking this sort of senior imam type figure their opinion, and they were like, think about the repercussions if their parents found out. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is they're 18 years old, plus years old. They don't, their parents, you know, it doesn't matter from a legal perspective. But, until we fix this mindset, I think this crisis is going to continue where, nikah has to be easier and we can't stigmatize divorce.
Abu Hassan, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you
maybe
so
you
much.
can go ahead and start some kind of matrimonial service, a halal one. Yeah, who
I
knows?
actually I really desire to do so. And I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me to do that for the people.
Tawfiq. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.